day's a day, a bad luck's always a coming my way.
For today's Grimm adventure, we're doing something a little extra special. You see, here at the Grimm Life Collective, we love cemeteries, and since we're in London, we had to come check out Highgate Cemetery. Movies were filmed here. The architecture here is beyond amazing. And it just has a reputation for being like the granddaddy of cemeteries. And just look at this. One of my all-time favorite Vincent Price movies was filmed here. The Abominable Dr. Phibes. Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald was filmed here as well. In fact, where we're walking right now at the end of this tunnel, it's called the Circle of Lebanon. This is our first stop. It's like, which way do we go? You're gonna go to the right? All right, we've seen some pretty amazing cemeteries in our time, Baby Gold, but nothing ever compares to this, not even New Orleans. When it comes to Highgate Cemetery, there are two sides, the west side and the east side, and both of them are equally beautiful. Both of them you want to visit. The west side is the oldest. And today we're just going to be spending pretty much the entire day just walking around. We have tickets for both. We have a tour guide. Well, we're the tour guide. We have a tour guidebook. We're going to show it to you. We're just taking our time through everything. The first thing that I want to do is track down the filming locations to Dr. Phibes, line everything up. In fact, fun fact really, they filmed on both sides of the cemetery.
What lovely music for a murder, or 2, or 3, or 9.
Who's this?
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to meet a dear friend.
You take his head, and I'll take his feet. Let's unscrew him.
But you I will kill.
But you can't, Doctor. I am already dead.
Are you ready for Dr. Phibes? Probably the most terrifying motion picture you'll ever see.
Usually whenever we do these film and location videos, we try to do shot for shot, but this one in particular, at Highgate Cemetery, we're trying to track down Dr. Phibes' crypt because the detectives want to see if his body's there. Now, after the caretaker gives the worm scene, he leads the detectives right down this path, the same one Jessica's walking. And you can see those giant tombstones behind her, and even more so, this part of the wall.
Fools, fools. They'll have the worms soon enough.
What happened to the money, the Phibes estate?
Oh, that's an immensely complicated matter, sir. It seems he had money invested all over Europe, but we're still investigating that, sir.
Where did he get all those degrees?
Now, what they're trying to do, and they don't show it in the movie, they should because it's a beautiful staircase. They walk right over here to this staircase down into the Circle of Lebanon to Phibes' crypt. And it's a little tricky to find because they actually put a fake crypt wall up. You'll see what I mean, but I think we know exactly where it's at. And now, tracking down Dr. Phibes' crypt. And it's kind of tricky because they all look alike, and some people have actually gotten it wrong, but being here, we were able to tell which two were used in the movie. And they are on both sides of Jessica right now. So if I back up here, I want you to take a look at all this. On Jessica's right, on your left when you're watching it, it says John and Emily Eliza Swain. You can see this portion of the crypt right there. See how it kind of like hangs over? You see this stone up there. In fact, pay attention to all the stones. They've been repaired, but they still look the same. But this one right here that doesn't have a nameplate on it, this was Phibes' crypt. In fact, right there, right in the center, it looks like there was a nameplate there. That's where the Phibes name was.
Open up, please.
So, in theory, in the world of Vincent Price, this was Dr. Phibes' grave. But if you know the movie, spoiler alert, he's not in there. He didn't burn in the car crash. His asses aren't in the coffin. And neither are his wife's. Dun dun! We've seen a couple different posts of people coming out here and trying to track down Phibes' crypt. And the one that they always choose, the one they always show, is a little further down in the circle. This one here matches up perfectly, and it's right next to the steps. Now, baby ghoul, before we go and explore the cemetery, there's one more film that we want to showcase, and that was Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald. And in the movie, they filmed here at Highgate Cemetery, which is in London, but in the movie, the cemetery, they say, is in Paris. Now, this is where Grindelwald is calling a meeting, right? And basically the big scene at the very end. And there's one shot that we can line up almost perfectly that lets you know that we're in the right area.
This is supposed to be the entryway into a sort of Colosseum-like bowl that they go into to hold their meeting. But as you can see, you cannot enter this section.
Right? And once everything happens, and you got that blue flame coming up all over the place, there's this establishing shot at the very end of the scene that's taken from up above. So for this, we got to go back up the 5 stairs and look for certain tombstones to match everything up. We spend a lot of time walking around the cemetery looking at the staircases. There are 2 of them, to see if anything matches spot on, like identical to the movie. And not really. So that kind of tells me that they kind of doctored the image. They built the staircase. They did in fact put mausoleums and a statue right there in the center of your screen. You can see where there's like the grass and the tree. But if we look down here, down the steps, you can kind of see it. So they definitely filmed here, and they definitely used this for inspiration. You can see at the bottom of the steps, the stonework. And that's pretty much it for the filming locations here at Highgate Cemetery, at least for now. I'm sure at some point it will come back. A lot of things were filmed here, but there's a few different graves that we want to check out. We also want to explore and just kind of take things in. So enjoy. They do have a free map that you can get, but for $5 they have this really nice book. It says Highgate Cemetery, Saved by Its Friends, and it is filled with all kinds of interesting stories about the people that are buried here. Highly recommend getting it. Souvenir guide. A lot of times whenever we're on the road, things can get pretty stressful trying to make sure you get the shot. So this is a nice little walk for sure. A place we've always wanted to be. Highgate Cemetery is one of the most well-known cemeteries in the world. And believe it or not, they are still burying people here. They are still having funerals. And I've heard that in order to be buried here, 1 of 2 things need to happen. You can't just buy a plot and someday you're going to die. You need to, one, either be above 80 years old, or two, be terminally ill. Those are the only two ways that you can be buried here. So the moment you die, in the ground you go, respectfully. And here's the final resting place of Sir Ian Holm. And you know his face. And I love that they have this giant bust of him from Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit. I mean, that's what I mostly remember him from, but what an actor and what a career. Man, talk about a nice little spot.
In the last few minutes, the death has been announced of the actor Sir Ian Holm, perhaps best known for roles in Chariots of Fire and The Lord of the Rings. He was 88. Sarah Campbell looks back at his long career.
He was one of Britain's most familiar and most reliable character actors. Oscar nominated for this performance in Chariots of Fire.
Oh, got your head back again. Get it level.
I'll watch you. I'll observe.
Harold Pinter said he was his favourite actor.
If I can see the big prize hanging there, believe me, I won't waste any time.
He was terrifying as the treacherous android Ash in Alien.
George.
At 5'5", he was often cast in diminutive parts. In The Borrowers, he played one of a family of tiny people, opposite his then wife, Penelope Wilton.
Only in the passageway.
You do me wrong to take me.
At the National Theatre, he was an acclaimed King Lear.
Thou art a soul in bliss, but I am bound upon a wheel of fire that mine own tears do scorn.
Yet for 17 years, he refused to appear live because of stage fright.
I'm old, Gandalf.
As Bilbo Baggins in The Lord of the Rings, he captured the character's good sense and selflessness.
I feel thin, sort of stretched, like butter scraped over too much bread. I need a holiday, a very long holiday, and I don't expect I shall return.
Rarely the star, but scores of productions were lit up by Sir Ian Holm's wit, warmth and intensity.
And not that far from Sir Ian Holm is the final resting place of actor Bob Hoskins, who played Eddie in one of Jessica's favorite movies, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Now this is all in a private area. You need permission back here, and we actually have permission to be here, which is why we're filming. But here it is. I'm gonna move the plan a little bit just so you can see his name. Bob Hoskins, 1942 to 2014. Wow. You know, it's crazy, Baby Goal. You know, growing up with Who Framed Roger Rabbit, it's amazing being here at Highgate Cemetery, but visiting his grave hits home more than anything, because that's childhood right there.
Get out of here.
She's married to Roger Rabbit.
Yeah. What a lucky girl.
He was perhaps the unlikely film star, but the star who appealed to all. Bob Hoskins grew up in London, a background that would shape many of his characters, but confessed to getting into acting after mistakenly being called for a theatre audition. His first big breakthrough came in Dennis Potter's Pennies from Heaven.
Well, it's impossible to explain. It's just not the sort of thing that you can put into words.
But it was his role as London gangster Harold Shand in The Long Good Friday that transformed him to film star.
Here, hold up. Where's Victoria?
The big roles followed, as did the accolades, including an Oscar nomination for Best Actor in the crime drama Mona Lisa.
Why am I doing this?
Because I asked you.
I'd never seen anybody cry in front or get so emotional. You could read his face, you know, read his actions, and he encouraged me to do that too.
It was only in the last few years that the 71-year-old stepped back from the limelight, announcing his retirement from acting in 2012, having been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Posting a picture online, daughter Rosa added, "The loss of my dad has broken my heart." Tonight, his agent confirmed that the star died peacefully in hospital, surrounded by his family after a bout of pneumonia, adding, quite simply, "We are devastated by the loss of our beloved Bob."
The entrance to the private cemetery is hidden very well here, and you blink, you miss it. But if you want to visit Bob Hoskins and you do not have permission from the family, then you can still see his grave. All you got to do is just know where to look. You can't get back there. But there he is right there. Now, baby Goal, when it comes to Highgate Cemetery, of course there's ghost stories, but as with anything, real life is often scarier. Now, supposedly this cemetery used to have a problem with exploding coffins. Yeah, well, natural gases from the body. So, I mean, back in the Victorian area, they were still trying to figure out all these different things, I'm guessing. So they kind of came up with this great idea. They would drill a hole in the coffin, put a pipe, and then after a while, I'm guessing, they would light a match and kind of throw it in there to just kind of get the gases to, so they didn't go kaboom. Now, there's one grave that's on this little path that we're on right now that wasn't an exploding coffin, but it has something to do with radioactivity. That's a very unique story. Now, believe it or not, the grave that we're walking up to right now is not an old grave. It's the final resting place of somebody by the name of Alexander Litvinenko, who died in 2006. Now, sadly, he was murdered by radioactive poisoning in London's Millennium Hotel. And his body, well, his final resting place is listed on the tours, and it's right here off the main path. And he's actually buried 12 feet down, not 6 feet, in a lead-lined coffin to protect anybody who comes to say hello. And that's right here. Crazy story, right? Let's get a closer look at him. And almost directly behind him is the grave of George Michael, the singer. Pretty wild. Let me back up a little bit. There we go. Hopefully I didn't make you dizzy. The singer George Michael is here as well. And actually it was a little hard finding his final resting place even with the map, because his tombstone doesn't say George Michael. Instead, it has his real name on it. But it's right here, about the center of your screen. So what does it say? Georgios Panayiotou? Died December 25th, 2016. Beloved son, brother, and friend.
OK, we've got some breaking news coming to us here via Thames Valley Police, who have confirmed the death of the singer George Michael at the age of 53. His publicist has said he passed away peacefully at home. The singer, who was 53, launched his career with Wham in the 1980s and continued his success as a solo performer. So just reminding you here that South Central Ambulance Service attended his home in Goring in South Oxfordshire. Police say that there were no suspicious circumstances. He was 53 and, as many people will know, had launched his career with Wham along with Andrew Ridgeley in the 1980s, and then went on to even greater success as a solo performer. He's often spoken...
Well, this is something unique, something we haven't seen in any of our cemetery safaris before until now. It's a sleeping angel. Oh my word. Of course you'd have to boop her toes. It really is like walking through a garden of the dead. Hey, look at that, full circle. Back to the entrance where we started this video. That was something else, right? I've seen pictures of this online and they've all been absolutely beautiful. But as with a lot of things, it doesn't come close to seeing this in person. I'm gonna go stand in the hall one more time. Yeah, I'm just gonna rest right here. Whew. And this is just the west side of the cemetery. And with that, I think we can safely say we're done with the west side for now. Let's head over across the street to the east side of Highgate Cemetery. Some of these gravestones and monuments on the hill are pretty freaking elaborate. And look at that, you kind of have to walk really slow just so you can take it all in. Now I point all this out because right over here, right at the end of it, there's a little pathway that goes up. And you see the tombstone with a cup of pens? See if I can get close enough to read that. Douglas Adams, writer, 1952 to 2001. I guess it's customary to come here and just leave a pen. There you go. I'm sure you know this by now, but in case you don't, Douglas Adams, he's the guy who's responsible for bringing us Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And let's take a look. Somebody left a picture here about dolphins. Let's see here. More of the dolphins. Knowledge is power. So long and thanks for all your stories. That's nice. Also, right down here by the road, beneath Douglas Adams' tombstone, is another bowl filled with pens, so it's got to be the thing to do. Karl Marx is another grave that I never thought that I'd ever get to visit. I'm not a political person in any way, shape, or form, and definitely really don't know much about him and his political beliefs, except for it was very, very controversial. Communism, right? But just look at the size of that head. It's massive. I've always seen pictures of it, never thought that I'd be here standing looking at it. Now, if I look at it straight on, can you tell that it's leaning? Now, supposedly, years ago, people were so mad because of his political beliefs, and they tried blowing it up. and this massive stone, this massive tombstone, has been leaning ever since. I have a thing for busts on tombstones, like heads. The more realistic, the better they are. And this just blows my mind that it's that massive. The last stone I was looking for in this cemetery on this trip is this one right here for Patrick Caulfield, who's an artist. And I just love that the tombstone itself says dead. And if I'm not mistaken, he was a pop artist who pretty much designed his own tombstone. Much respect in that. I want to do something like that. Pretty wild, right? Never seen a tombstone that said dead before. And here's another death mask, this time for Malcolm Robert Andrew McLaren. Like the quote, better a spectacular failure than a benign success. Walking through the cemetery, I see this off in the distance. I was wondering what it was. It's a piano. There's a little quote. What does it say? Sweet thou art sleepin', cradles on my heart, safe in God's keepin', while I must weep apart. That's nice. Didn't expect to see that here. Now this is the final resting place, the grave of a man by the name of Carl Mayer, M-A-Y-E-R. And it was a little hard to find, mainly because it's not a very popular spot. But if you're a fan of horror movies and horror cinema like we are, then Carl Mayer might be of interest to you. You see, he was a co-author of the screenplay of The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Pretty wild, right? Another reason why it was so hard to find is because the writing, the letters kind of blend in with the stone, but it says Carl Mayer, 1894 to 1944. The 9 and the 4 are missing. Pioneer in the art of the cinema, erected by his friends and fellow workers. Now here's the fun thing about the Highgate Cemetery, both the east and the west side. You can come here, pay the admission, and tour both sides of the cemetery at your own leisure. Just walking around, spending all day here taking pictures, reading tombstones. I even saw somebody drawing a Karl Marx headstone. You can also book a tour on the west side that takes you to some of the more intricate tombstones as well as into the catacombs. Sadly, when we got here, it was already too late. The last tour already left. So next time we come back, we're going to take you guys into the catacombs. But with that being said, thank you for joining us on another grim adventure, this time to Highgate Cemetery. And until next time, happy Halloween.
Wherever I come, bad luck is coming my way. Wherever I go, hard luck is there to stay. Good luck never stays a day. A bad luck's always